Dear friends, it gives me great pleasure to present the MMI-sponsored Medium and the Light Award to none other than BW Powell. Congratulations to you, BW.
Thank you. Gratefully accepting this award. Gratitude to all my friends who spoke on behalf of my writing and teaching. Grateful for the grace of this recognition in this moment. Gratefully, I'll address the light that keeps drawing me when isolations and disconnections are close to real. I speak to you from Cordoba, Spain, here with my family. Recently, we experienced another round of COVID. All are mending. I'm speaking to you when it's very late, after 1 a.m., speaking from what the poets Gongora and Lorca called La Convivencia, cultures, faiths, lyrics, songs, visions, and sights, stories, and fables converging, coinciding. Nearby, the Mesquite domain is home to a church, a mosque, a synagogue ruin, a zoco where artisans make flamenco guitars and Arabian drums. I speak from the heart of an ancient city, in the conduits of signals linking, dividing us. These days, I've been brooding on the words remote and enmeshed. It's a spiritual concern to be engaged in asking what despair and desolation must do to us. What frustration and numbing, the increase of insensitivity among us. What insecurity and unease, exhaustion and meanness of expression, the narrowing of articulate thought will do. This is the part of the effect of living in the after rays of the pandemic. But is La Peste truly over? What's been done to our senses? Let us recognize additions. World War III blazing in the Ukraine. Teetering economies, ecologies in disarray, authoritarian turns, extremist threats to democratic forms, emotional convulsions, fatigue seizing us, desperate derangements on the World Wide Web, infections amok. The world is burning down, says novelist Arundhati Roy. Yesterday, I took my morning walk through the old quarter, across the Roman bridge by the Calahorra, back to our small flat in the trees by the fountains of the Plaza de Andalusia. I saw reams of garbage, beer cans, plastic wrappers, latex gloves, masks, food scraps, animal droppings, cigarette butts, graffiti spray painted on a wall saying, "Cry, baby bitch, anti-feminista." Stunned, I glanced at paradise and saw that. I've said before in other places how it's difficult for me to accept words and stories, essays, and expressions that don't reflect rupture, the cusp of impending destructiveness. Any attempt to address things positively without a sense of our vulnerability and of the many who suffer, those who drop trash in a park near paradise must suffer too, seems to me finally of little kindred use. So to express my gratitude on this night of grace, I'll speak 2 words that I know inspired my mentors, Marshall McLuhan and Arthur Fry, among them, and inspired teachers, friends, colleagues, comrades, healers, dreamers, writers, artists, family members, many who've passed. These have been years when I've experienced too many losses. Miscommunication, misunderstanding can also result in painful transits, more losses. First, the word to express what I believe I need to say tonight. Eudaimonia. It means human flourishing. The other word to complement eudaimonia comes from Hildegard von Bingen. viriditas, the greening. I see these words implying the work. I update them to mean the alchemical opus of ourselves, cultivating depths during our time of technological expansion. The flourishing means finding channels, contacts, openings, outlets, agencies, silencing, restricting access to others. These harm our experiences. The flourishing of the work implies the vocation of creating, the honor of teaching, the channel to a public, even if the readership is small, the welcoming range of possibilities. I take the word eudaimonia to also mean to have some shelter from a storm, to have care, good health, to have degrees of safety, to be able to live without the threats of disease and war. If we offer hope, it mustn't be a feeble one. If we offer proposals and pitches, they mustn't be glib. I learned from my guides and from this ancient city and its poets and the passings in my life, those I've had the good fortune to know, these arduous essentials. Education means transformation. Art means changing perception, cultivating perception. Extension means expansion of our reach, of our senses and minds. Art and education mean time to reflect, space for one's emotions and thoughts to grow, time to array perceptions, listening for the singing voice, space to work in necessary intervals of solitude. Extension and deepening side by side move in waveforms. But technological innovation shocks us into evolutionary hyperdrive. Whiplash, jet lag are everyday experiences. Deepenings mean we cultivate a vital inwardness, but relentless extension puts us on the invisible rack, stretching nerves thin. Relentless inwardness descends into withering loneliness. The necessary interval of solitude becomes a gap into which you fall into depression. Stretching and imploding, the self-seeking transcendence and yet experiencing the magnetic draw towards cataclysm. The needs of our spirit are true. It cries for the middle way, the medium between the overpowering universal experiences of stretching and imploding. Our words and teachings then in Paul Celan's evocation must be like messages in a bottle washed up on the turbulent shores of our besieged island Earth, where towers crowd, communiques swarm, and dark energies like La Peste, like the war, loom in our atmosphere. Sorrow could be in the bottle, joy too. Who knows where the words will go? Our connectivities become waves. Our screen times become our unmappable shores. Have I mixed too many metaphors? Reached too far tonight? Eudaimonia may mean look up. Send the messages even in scraps in the bottles awash on the oceanic. Dream well and gaze deep, see sense again. Extension means expansion of light, though we must recognize that perspectives on light will turn and sometimes falter. I've learned some things over the years. Teaching and writing must be visceral and thus passionate if they're to have an effect. And to increase affect and effect, the greening beyond numbing, and the impatience that's a consequence of racking and straining is part of why I write and teach. To counter the insensate, I remind myself of this every moment I put pen to paper, whenever I enter a room to talk. To be in contact also with those who struggle, and to witness what we've made. Witness the algorithm, Like the power Kafka vividly depicts in his fragment novels, The Trial and the Castle, it hunts us. It thrives on hurt and need. And if you're not a little paranoid these days, then you're really missing what's happening. What Simone Weil calls the embedded self points to intimate involvement in the process of extension and deepening. Embedding is the crucial juncture, the tensed engagement and immersion. I write and teach myself into encouraging, into encouragement. I do this by embedding what I do in words and talks. Rabbi Tarfon once said, "You are not required to complete the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." This Hebrew wisdom I repeat to myself when I mourn lost family and absent friends, and I feel prickly estranged and I'm depleted, overwhelmed by garbage in the park near the paradise of an ancient city, when I'm daunted by clouded paths ahead. The wisdom in those lines is a vision of how the splendor melds with the media we often blindly create, with what both expands and racks our minds and senses. I hold to this. Surely eudaimonia means expanding, not expulsion, deepening, not disappearance into oblivion. Now in Cordoba's deep night, I hear dogs barking in the fields around the city. Fire alarms sound off in the hills because heat lightning strikes the trees, causing flash fires.
Really good.
Friday morning, the work will call me back. I follow the current, back to pen and paper, back to the words, back to looking for sources that inspire, provoke, back to communicating to others in our rooms of crises and connections. Perceiving, making. These are legacies that ask us to commune. And maybe going far off track is the only way I can go now. It's what's available to me in our crashing moments. By saying too much, I may learn what's enough and not enough. The medium point, again. Intolerable insolence. Vai, the dissident Chinese installation artist, calls the recreating process. This means following the inward and outward momentum of our immediacies, no matter what comes. What's ahead? What's calling? Do we fight ghosts? Do we fear meeting the images that may merely reflect ourselves? Do we find ourselves fearing the loss of companions and channels? Flourishing, greening. Can they emerge everywhere, for everyone? I know there's only the work, going up and down on watery ladders, and often back and forth on routes leading to disputable crossroads made sometimes of fire and always of our breath. Thank you, all who have honored my work with this award. I bid you a good night. Say good night from Cordoba. Thank you.